Hello friends, this is Scott, and today's video is about my in-ground static compost bin that's at my Salt Lake City residence. And I'm showing you my favorite part of this bin is that I get to chuck the materials or all the kitchen scraps into the bin from the deck. And yeah, it's a little bit of a toss, but yeah, we make it most of the time, not always. But as we're walking down ground level and then stepping down into the pit, you'll see that the last throw was a little short. And yeah, that happens, but not a big deal. I can just throw that material in the bin. As you see, we throw quite a bit of kitchen scraps in here, and let's check out and see what we got in here. Now, this video is going to be mostly about the problems I'm having with this bin and the problems with an in-ground static bin that's an old trampoline hole. As you see here, it's got tons of red worms in here, and so it's a red worm factory. So I've got lots and lots of worms in here. Now here's a close-up of a cluster of red worms. And again, this whole bin is just chock full of these worms. And they are the army that breaks down materials into the most usable form that plants can have, and they're very beneficial. So the first step to screen the material is I got to remove the cover to access the material. As you see here, there's lots of raw materials. There's lots of leaves, there's sticks, there's just the sacks from the kitchen. There's a lot of material that is not broken down. And that's the first problem you have with a single bin is that you've got to separate the old and the new. And throwing it from the deck we're not the most successful in separating materials, which after I insulate with leaves in the fall, there's a nice big earthworm sidebar. But after topping this bin off with all these leaves, I've got lots of material I've got to dig down through to try to get to the good compost in the bottom. And so a lot of this material is not ready. And so the spring, after you've loaded everything up in the fall to insulate the worms and everything, it's not the most ideal time to get really good quality compost. Also, this material is very, very wet. And in this little pit, I have automatic sprinklers all around it that water all the plants, and they overwater this compost bin. So not having a roof on it and having too much water in it is always a problem. As you see here, I'm trying to find a little bit of good stuff in all this mix, but I'm also looking for some red worms because I want to take some down to the hobby farm to bring some reinforcements to the tire compost bin because I have quite a few worms in there, but I need a lot more. So as I'm screening, it's a dual purpose. I'm also collecting worms in one of those Home Depot buckets. But I want to get a little bit of material down there, a little bit of good screen compost. I want to show you how good that stuff is, and then I'm going to take some down to the hobby farm because I have some vegetables to plant. But it's becoming readily apparent as I'm trying to dig this material out that I'm going to have a tough time. There's very little material that's actually ready, and that material is all the way at the bottom. And yeah, I've got lots of other issues in here. I found a nice little cluster there of worms, so I'm going to take those. But the biggest issue I have with this bin right now is you see the big maple tree behind me, and I have grapevines all around. Because this pit is sunk into the ground, all the tree roots are going for the nutrients. So the trees, the bushes, the grapes, and everything are running their roots in here. And they're feeding well. It's very healthy for those plants and trees, but it makes it that I have a whole cluster of roots that are binding all this material together. And I've got to try to get through all that. But you start to see some of that material there as I'm throwing it back in the bin. But here's a close-up of what I've got to deal with. And I'm trying to get down to the bottom where there is some screenable compost. But there's just all kinds of stuff in here. This is not ready. So I'm going to do my best to get some. But I'm finding lots of earthworms. And again, this is a compost bin, so it mostly should be red worms. But because it's in ground, I got some monster earthworms. And here's one of the bigger ones that I found. Pretty impressive. Here's another look at a good cluster of them that I'm trying to screen the material. And those will all go back into that Home Depot bucket and be taken down to the hobby farm. But there's lots of worms in here. And again, they're great chicken snacks too, but they're just hard workers. They just keep on breaking material down and making great soil. Here's an example of the roots I'm dealing with. And those feeder roots are binding up all the material, making it very hard to dig it out and to screen it. But I am determined. I'm down to the bottom, and I'm going to get some material from this. And I've got 3 buckets that I'm hopefully take at least 3 buckets of material down. Becoming readily apparent that I'm not going to get enough compost screened out of this bin to be able to do all that I need to do down at the hobby farm with the new beds. So I'm going to go back to using my chickens. And all the material I'm going to take out of that static bin, I'm going to dump it in here a little bit at a time. and let the chickens go through it, because again, they love the worms, and they'll mix all this material and help shred it up. And yeah, the chickens are going to be my compost system in the future. The majority of it, I'll still have compost piles and leaf piles and things like that. But giving the chickens everything is helps with the feed bill, keeps them interested and not so bored. But here's a look at the good stuff. Okay, this is as good as you can find anywhere, and you can't buy stuff this good. This is full of worm castings and just organic matter, and it's just really, really good stuff. Now I have 3 buckets here. That one's full of worms, and I did manage to screen one other bucket of compost, so not showing it here, but I'm taking 3 buckets of compost down. So here's a look at the end. You see I did get all the way down to the ground on the very far side, but all this material is just not broken down. It's just going to take months and months, and that's another thing with the static compost bin is it's not fast. The material has to sit there for a year or 2 to break down. Unlike the materials or the bins that you turn the material and heat it up, and you can get fast compost that way, but it's a lot of work. So it's a trade-off. Do you want compost fast, and if you do, you got to have lots of work. So here I'm taking a look at the worms that I have in the bin, and here's the reinforcements I brought down. I'm just going to dump those in. And we'll take a little bit of a close-up, and yeah, there's quite a few there. Again, I've got so many in Salt Lake, I'll just keep bringing them down. But I'm going to put that material through the chicken coop or the chicken pen, let them dig through it, let them shred the material. That will help break down the process. I'll lose quite a few worms in the process, but they reproduce pretty well, and I think the worms in the tires will reproduce. Now this is the destination for my 3 buckets of screened compost. And I have this long bed, and I'm still not sure whether I'm putting carrots, beets, and those types of root crops here, or whether I'm going to put broccoli, cauliflower, and cabbage. But that's for another day. But there's another look at the material, and it's dried out a little bit, so it's nice and fluffy and flaky. And I don't have much again, so I'm just going to top dress the bed with it, and then when I go to plant, I will take a rake and I'll mix it into the first ½ inch to inch of soil, and then I'll plant the seeds into that, and that'll help get a good start for the sprouting. But this is a good indicator of how far 15 gallons of compost will go, and it's I guess not quite 15 gallons. The buckets were not totally full, but yeah, they don't go real far. So I'm probably going to have to get a big bag of compost and bring it down just so I have the material, because planting season is coming, and I've probably got 3 weeks till it's time to plant the summer vegetables. And I need compost. Again, this soil will probably do okay, but right now I need the material in the beds so that I could get a good start on my garden. But there's a look, all spread out. I'm not going to rake it in right now, but that's close to 15 gallons of the good stuff, and it'll mix into the soil well, and hopefully it'll retain moisture and add some fertility. And there's some soil life there, centipede running around. But you'll get earwigs, you'll get other types of critters in here too, but the chickens love that. So after spreading it out, I watered the garden real well, and there's Miss Thing. She's out here hanging out with me, eating a little bit of grass, looks like. But when I filmed this was a trip that I mowed the entire hobby farm, excluding the pasture. And I had some grass clippings, and I stuck them on the potatoes. These are the red and white potatoes, and so I'll water that in really good. And that'll be some mulch to keep that soil moist while I'm gone, because I'm not always, with real estate and other responsibilities, I'm not always able to get down here timely. So got to keep the water on everything and keep it growing. Well, thanks for watching this video. And if you like what you see, please hit that subscribe button, like, share, and comment. But the future of my composting will be through the chicken yard. Thanks for watching.